everyone and welcome back to my channel. So I'm just going to go through some more of your comments on the Empire of Normality video. Before I do that, I just want to read out the comments in response to my own thoughts on the Hape video, the Francesca Hape video, Changes in the Concept of Autism, which one of you commented on that video itself and I replied to it in my last video, so I just want to now read out a comment in response to what I said about that video, Francesca Hape's Changes to the Concept of Autism. So one of you has said, I agree completely and I can also relate to your experience. My OCD began in childhood, but got gradually worse over time. And during primary school, and even most of secondary school, it wasn't my main problem. Yes, I have ADHD, but the way I see it, ADHD is an executive functioning disorder, and most autistic people have some sort of executive functioning problem, with perhaps over half of us having enough to meet the criteria for ADHD. So I regard my ADHD as the executive impairments caused by autism itself. That aside, my education was destroyed by autism from my restricted interests and routines interfering with my schooling, especially homework. For example, my repetitive behaviours attracting the attention of bullies, especially homework, for example. So I just read that again. That aside, my education was destroyed by autism from my restricted interests and routines interfering with my schooling, especially homework, for example, or my repetitive behaviours attracting the attention of bullies. One behaviour which I'm ashamed to admit to was that I used a dummy until I was 18 years old. Needless to say, that was one of the things that kept me from ever staying over at someone's house. My social issues meant that I had no friends, which impacted my self-esteem and left me vulnerable to the bullies. My autism was what prevented me from meeting milestones such as going on school trips, learning to drive, going to university, getting a job, and was primarily responsible for my not having moved out of my parents' home until I was 35 years old. I consider myself lucky in that I've had my parents and then also my husband to support me, and also because I live so intensely in my own little world, I've never gotten too down about my limitations. And until recently, I never really had to be honest with myself about the potential consequences of losing my support, which if it were to vanish, I'd be in a very serious trouble indeed. I think clinicians like Hape care a lot about autistic people, and as such, they have a lot to lose if the autism community were to turn on them. Not only would it damage their ability to do research, but also to provide care for autistic people. I'm quite shocked at how nasty some in the neurodiversity movement can be towards people that don't share their dogmas. I think it is really important that autistic people who disagree with some or all of the neurodiversity movement paradigm speak up, so that the public know that the very loud voice of the neurodiversity movement doesn't represent us all. So thank you for that. That's a very good analysis of the issues. I'd also be interested to know your thoughts on something called neuroaffirmative practice, which I might do a video on at some point, which is now seems to be what all psychologists are being trained in, like new psychologists. Seems to be the sort of in vogue sort of training at the moment is neuroaffirmative practice. It's basically the neurodiversity movement paradigm, or the paradigm of the neurodiversity movement, being applied in the context of therapy or education or the workplace. And at its heart, neuroaffirmative practice is kind of countering the medical model, and it's saying that autism should not be viewed as a disorder or a deficit, but as a different processing style. And this neuroaffirmative practice is kind of it seems to be being applied wholesale, regardless of what an autistic person might actually think, which doesn't seem very neuroaffirmative to me. And indeed, I've had a psychologist before claiming to be neuroaffirmative who told me to go away and think about whether or not I have a disorder, or whether I should see it in a more positive frame of mind. I really wish I'd ended the sessions there and then. I will now, because you live and learn, and I've been pushed too many times. I'm not going to put up with that anymore. If ever I come across a psychologist who says that, I'm going to say, I'm sorry, I'm quitting, bye-bye. I'm going to find someone who's not like that, because it's really, really toxic and quite frankly offensive, because to me, autism is a disorder. And yeah, so I'd be interested to know your thoughts on neuroaffirmativity, yeah, just want to know your thoughts. But I might actually do an actual video on this some point, because there's a British Psychological Association article on neuroaffirmativity, which I'd like to discuss at some point. Okay, so now I'd like to move on to some more of your comments about the Empire of Normality video. So these are your comments for video number 14. So one of you says, I'm in total agreement with you about the biopsychosocial model. I experience my autism as being rooted in myself and not coming from outside society. For example, I have real problems around social reciprocity. I tend to be almost exclusively focused on my own interests and find it really hard to engage with others for any length of time on things of interest to them. This is not something that society has caused, and it would be impairing in any human society, as social reciprocity is central to all group dynamics. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. I also have a severe problem with social reciprocity. It's part of the reason why I really struggle to make friends and maintain friends, because although idealistically I want friends, or idealistically, think, having friends is a good idea. The reality is I just lack for social motivation, unless I am really, really interested in someone. Now that is quite rare. And then of course I want to know every single detail about their life. It goes the other way. That's because those people are very special. For some reason, I don't know what, I really, 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 really like them. No, it's actually quite rare. It happens sometimes, and it's amazing when it happens. And I want to cling on to those people because they're really special to me. But, I mean, it hardly ever happens. But most of the time, I just don't find people that interesting. And it's a bit like what you were saying. It's not because I don't care about them. It's just that, because I do, it's just that, I guess, in terms of, if you think, my interests, the things I'm interested in, are more motivating than me spending time with someone who isn't really giving me the same amount of interest. Usually, for me, if I'm to spend time with someone, it has to be for a purpose. There has to be a purpose there. And, I mean, that's not to say, I sometimes don't like just spending time with someone. It depends who it is. Because I do, I do, and I genuinely enjoy sometimes spending time with someone who I find non-threatening and that I get on with. You know, like sometimes, for example, I quite enjoy having Zoom contacts with my auntie, for example. We don't do it that often. But now and again, we have Zoom contacts, and I genuinely enjoy those contacts, you know. Admittedly, I do most of the talking a lot of the time, and I do have to try and remind myself, you know, to ask her questions as well. And by the way, I am genuinely interested. It's not like, I need to put it this way. It's not like I'm not interested in other people. Like, I am interested in other people. And I will try and ask them questions. I will try and ask them questions. You know, and I do genuinely will express interest in them. And that interest is real. Like, I do genuinely want to know about people's lives. Like, I'm not like not interested in them. It's more that I have this real problem with kind of reciprocity. So it's not like I'm not interested in them, because I am. It's more to do with the fact that I'm trying to explain it. It's really hard to explain. It's more to do with the fact that I have this very strong desire, like an internal desire, to basically do all of the talking. Basically. And I have to work very hard to kind of moderate that, because I've learned the hard way that, well, yeah, I've spent enough time on this planet. I've been told a lot, you know, oh, you must ask other people questions. So I do try very hard, because I know that that's what you're supposed to do, because, you know, I have learned that over time. But it's not easy for me, it's not natural for me, and I have to work very hard at trying to do that. So I can, to some extent, do a display of reciprocity, if you want, you know, like a display. I guess the difference is that it's something that's really quite hard work for me. It's not instinctive, and my default mode is to just monologue and to info dump, and basically to talk more than the other person. So I do really, really struggle with the reciprocity thing. It's something I've had to kind of actively try and learn, but it's definitely not something that comes easy to me. And because it's something I've had to learn, and because it's not innate, I can do a display of it to some extent. It's easier if I am genuinely interested in the other person in the first place, or if it's someone that I find I'm comfortable around, or that is someone that I've chosen to be with for a certain, and I can only do it for a certain amount of time as well. Like, I could do it for a short amount of time, but if I'm with that person for longer, eventually I'll just stop doing it, because I can't keep it up. It's like it's something I could do for a short period of time, but eventually you'll find that I end up eventually going back to just wanting to monologue forever about my interests, basically. So I can do it for a short amount of time, but I can't do it, but it does break down. And I can't do the reciprocity thing enough to kind of really be able to maintain like proper friendships, because I could do a display of it, but eventually, like when you're talking about proper friendships, like the reciprocity is a bit more complex and deeper. Like you often have to kind of give up things to do up things that other people want to do that you might not be interested in. I can't do that. I might be able to kind of like bluff it initially, but it's not going to last, because the strain is too great. And ultimately, I just want to go back to my interests. My interests carry more motivation to me. My interests are inherently more motivating than spending lots and lots of time with people. Yeah. But yeah, I do really struggle with reciprocity. That's a very long-winded way of saying it. Well, I'm going to move over to the next video now, just to carry on going over your comments. So, moving over to the next video now.